All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having us, OO and the team. I am very excited to be here for a number of reasons. One, Adia is I like to call her my sugar mommy. She's someone that I look up to very much, and one of the people that I really love to have conversations with, any kind of conversations, right? And today we are going to be talking about building your startup. I hope that the founders here are listening, the ones that are pitching, hi guys, and also every other founder that's in the audience, right? I have this love-hate relationship with with founders, and it seems like I'm always dragging them, but guys, it's all love, right? And we are all working together to sort of grow the ecosystem. So Sugar Mommy, welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much. I'll tell you a secret. Olumide actually told me to come here and drag founders. So don't believe anything he tells you about a love-hate relationship. It is all hate. It is all hate.
No, I think that I think the carrot and stick approach is a good one. And if there's anyone who's very well positioned to do that, it will be Adia. Maybe you people don't listen to me because I'm a small boy and don't have money, and I've not controlled $4 billion in budgets at MTN. So you guys
revenue, sir, revenue, please. That was not my budget.
So maybe you guys don't rate me, but at least you rate Adia a little bit. First of all, let's kick off very quickly. I don't know if we have too much time, but I want us to walk through what the journey is typically like for a typical startup founder of trying to build a business. I would use a lot of business than startup, because I think there's a little bit of confusion in the ecosystem right now as to whether we need to build a business or whether we're just playing games, right? Which startups tend to connote. So I'm going to ask Adia, start by asking her, what's the typical journey for someone who has an idea? Say, I have an idea now and I want to turn it into a company that is generating revenue and actually profitable. How do I approach it? What's the thinking? How do I begin,
That feels like a question for a founder. So, but I'll do my best. So I have worked with founders at every stage, from seed to now listed at MTN that I recently left. So I have had a chance to observe the conversations at every stage, and in many cases understand the story of the beginning. So I think lots of people think, you put some slides together, you get an MVP, you get a few customers, and then you go to YC. But then that doesn't always work, right? Because the context is missing. I think YC fundamentally can support the market by being fed by local VCs here, right? Because I think valuation then gets confused. You don't have enough money to scale. You don't have the right talent. It's the same story I've seen over and over again. Now, I've realized that if you haven't read a book called The Prosperity Paradox, I think you should read it. I think that we are a pre-middle class economy, and we constantly launch post-middle class business models, right? So I think when you are trying to extract money from a country that does not have a self-sustaining middle class, you're always going to hit a ceiling very, very quickly. I think what we should do, though, is think about how to build businesses that become parents and grandparents to other businesses just by existing. I think that is actually the key to your stability. I'm sure you guys, many of us here that still have green passports have gone to VFS. You see how VFS is surrounded by people that are taking pictures, people that are making photocopies, people that are, doing all kinds of things. That's an ecosystem around VFS. Now, think about the LIRS guy that wants to go and log that gate. What's going to happen to that person on the way? You walk past all the passport people, all the ancillary businesses around that embassy will stop you, right? So I think it's really important for us to listen to and understand the principles from the book, the FOSA's book, on market creation, and start building those types of businesses.
That's a very good one. And my next question was going to be, what kind of structures would you need if you had an idea? and you wanted to take your idea to market in terms of like finding an MVP and finding customers and then finding customers who are going to pay and then finding customers who are going to pay again. That sounds like a long journey, but I promise you that's how it works, right? You get an MVP, you find customers who pay, you find customers who are going to pay again, and then you find customers who are going to bring other customers, and then that's how you begin to build that pipeline for the business. So, what advice do you have for people who are?
I think I'm a massive fan of structure, right? But I think that sometimes you can put it in too early, right? I think at the very, very beginning, you don't really know enough about your market, your customers, your team, your product, your sales process, your lead time. Your costs, you don't know anything. I think when some things start to become clear and you see them recurring, like if somebody pinches you and says, how do you acquire customers? And you can answer that question from your sleep, then that now becomes something you can standardize, right? And when you standardize it, document it. I'm also a big fan of documentation. I'm already half in love with a startup that has a good Notion workspace, right? So if you've documented, then it becomes easy for you to delegate that task to someone else in the team rather than you doing it yourself. But there's a time in a business's life when it's too early to have structure and, you can keep notes, right? But like sometimes you don't want to introduce structure before it is necessary. But once an action becomes repeatable and reliable, right, then you can start saying, okay, what does structure look like? How do I document? And the purpose of documenting is so that someone else in the business can take that action in your absence and get maybe 80 to 90% of the result that you would get. And when you now want to check the quality of, you have to check the quality of how well you've passed that down. So if you're only getting a 50% result, that means there's something missing in the communication and you need to go back and revisit it, and tweak.
Thank you. That circles back, I think, to the topic of this session, which is translating from being a band of pirates to the Navy. I'll tell you a quick story. Everybody here has seen Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Oh, Lord. All right. So Captain Jack Sparrow and his entire band of pirates, right? That's typically what it's like when you start a company. You have a bunch of people who are just generalists who do a lot of things. There's not enough control. There's not enough structure. They have one goal. That goal is go and take over that ship, right? When they get on the ship or when they get close to the ship, everybody does what they need to do. There are no rules. Just jump on it and fight whoever you need to fight and win and take it over, right? But by the time you get past that stage, then you get to the stage where Adia is talking about, where you have some processes that you have tried over time that have worked, and then you begin to think about, okay, how do we institutionalize these processes and make them stuff that are recurring so that you now know exactly what you need to do when something happens or when you encounter another ship, you know that, okay, we need to approach from the rear or from the front, or we need to take the captain's room first, or we need to go and take the engine room first, or whatever, right? So it's it's basically transitioning from the parts where it's just generalists to the point where, at some point you have structure, and now you have generalists. So you need generalists to be able to do things better. And then you're taking stuff like compliance a lot more seriously, right? You're taking stuff like product development, the landscape or the trajectory of your product a lot more seriously. And then you have processes for like hiring and firing, and you have processes for performance improvements and management, and you have processes for even disengaging people. You have processes for paying vendors, for instance, just to bring it to something that we can all relate to. Paying vendors, you have processes for all of these things. So can you speak a little bit to some of these things that we talked about?
Yeah, so I think it's really easy to build a company and only focus on the outcomes. Was the vendor paid, yes or no? Was the vendor paid on time? Was the vendor paid, fully, right? Those are now questions that can cause problems in the future that you may not be tracking. So I'm a big fan of metrics, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about metrics today. So I'll give you an example, right? So, at one of the companies I worked at, all the dashboards were just built to count money. And then when it came time to find out, why you didn't perhaps hit your target for the day, the week, or the month, that one would now take 2 weeks, right? So you lose a lot of time as an organization when you cannot immediately trace, you cannot diagnose, you cannot find the cause, you cannot immediately tell what you need to do next. That also slows your team down because your team is not empowered with information. So by the time you've written a job description, for somebody that runs social media campaigns or runs sales campaigns. If the person doesn't understand that the number of customers in the sales pipeline is too low, they don't know that they need to go and step up their work, right? Because you wait until the end of the month and you just see, okay, how much did we get in sales, right? So it's really important to start taking your view or the visibility in the numbers in your business from not just the final end result and start stepping back 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, right? And then that now starts to line up with the job descriptions of the specialists that you've written, right? So it's not, honestly, for me, only me and like maybe the most senior people in my teams are responsible for revenue. Everybody else should be responsible for the activities that lead to revenue, right? But often I step into organizations and then I see that everybody has revenue as a KPI because they think that that's going to motivate people. It's really easy for an analyst to just like check out. What is revenue? How can you give them a target of 3 trillion? Somebody that is 20 years old, what do they understand about that, right? So I think for me, it's really just about stepping back and actually, the more senior you are, the further back in the process you should be making sure it's available, right, and distributing that visibility across your team.
Yes. I think that segues nicely to what I was going to talk about next, or ask you about next, which is how to build high-performing teams, right? I know that you
start with high performance.
Okay, yes. Okay, let's start with high performance. What does high performance mean? What are the metrics in your experience, really, that have defined or that continue to define high performance in a team?
Okay, so I'm really big on something in HR people call a competency model. Right? What a competency model is that for every job, there is a certain there's knowledge, skills, and abilities required to do that job. And, if you put that on like a 4 or 5 point scale, you should know where the person you are dealing with is and whether that person's present skill set matches the skill set required for the job. So I spend a lot of time defining that and sort of measuring my teams against what the competency model, should expect, right? But true high performance for me, right? They start to look like, I give 2 people an assignment, right? Who comes back to me with exactly what I need and whose outputs exceeds their peers in quality. Though that's how people start to stand out in my view. It's like if I compared you with your mates, right? What is the quality of the work that I've asked you for and what I get back? So I think lots of people just, was the work received or not? But quality is extremely important to me because it's the difference between, catching a problem that is going to, create a risk that is going to kill the business, right, in the future, right, versus somebody that's just checking a box and giving you what's been asked for. So I think if there are particular skills like so if you have I'm trying to think of an example here, right? If you have a person that you give a problem and not only do they come back with the answer, right? Next time they have distributed the solution to that problem to their whole team so that people see that issue a lot earlier. That to me is the behavior of a high performer because the person has now, taken extra initiative to ensure that result does not recur. So that's not only a critical thinker, that's a systems thinker, right? That's somebody that's actually trying to protect the structure of your business. So for me, if somebody comes back and is giving me results that exceed their peers, that's like a first signal.
So for a startup, in a startup environment, how does one foster this culture that encourages this kind of performance, this kind of doing more than is required and taking a lot of initiative in the positive direction performance? How do you, in your experience, what are some of the things that a founder or a CEO or whoever some of the structures that need to be put in place to ensure that this culture permeates the entire organization?
So you've got 2 types of leaders, right? You've got leaders that rule with fear, and you've got leaders that lead with love. And you've really just got to figure out the kind of person you are, because I can't really knock. I lead with love. I don't rule with fear. That's my own personal position. Yeah. But you can't knock the fact that there are some leaders who use fear, and it is very effective.
I also think a lot of founders need to go to therapy.
Yes, I agree. So I think it depends on what you as an individual want, as somebody reporting to a founder or as a founder yourself, right? I think the challenge with fear is that the what you get out of your team is always temporary. So you have to keep your foot on the pedal and keep pushing that fear lever all the time. And that can be quite that just means that all your results are temporary. That anything you are getting is short term, it's going to be tactical, right? And as soon as that person can escape the tension of that discussion, they're going to escape, right? However, when you lead with love, right? Some people wake up in the morning and, you can go to sleep knowing that you have a different kind of commitment. Now, this may just be me justifying, the choices I've made, as a leader, right? Because there can be someone else that's going to get on this stage and tells you they prefer to be a terrorist and it gets them results. And it does, right? And you and I have heard of toxic CEOs and they are doing very, very well, right? So, but nobody can lead independent of a team. So you have to just decide who you want to be, who you want to work for, and how you want your organization to function.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, speaking about toxic CEOs, I think that if the result justifies the method, I think that the result is key, right? So you cannot be a toxic CEO and your company is failing. And then you come to me and you say, I need to do this thing, but you are a toxic CEO. So I'm like, hey, why don't you try something else? You get me? So I agree that it works for some people, and maybe the result is a justification. But for some people, it doesn't. And it takes that self-awareness for them to understand that, okay, maybe I need to change my leadership style, right? Or maybe I'm dealing with some kind of trauma. Maybe there's something in my childhood that is not going to make me succeed, or that is not going to put my company on the best path of success. And maybe I need to get that figured out. Maybe I need to go see a therapist, or maybe I need to get on some program or whatever. It sounds like joke, but it's something that I take very seriously, because I think that everything that we do in life is influenced in so many ways, even in ways that you cannot even think or imagine, by a lot of the things that make us who we are, right? So if you are not aware enough to know that there's this attitude that I have that may stall my progress as a founder or as a CEO or as a team lead or whatever, and I need to sort of figure that out, and you constantly struggle with how to make success from your company.
Yeah, but having said that, though, as much as there are a few ruler CEOs that are successful, there are also many that fail. And they fail along the way because people give up on them, people decide not to help them, and so on and so forth. So most importantly, if you are a founder or a leader, I think your example that goes a very, very long way in motivating people to behave a certain way.
Setting the culture.
Yes. And I think it's very important for us to unpack culture a little bit. And culture is an outcome. It's the end of the equation. The inputs into the equation are values and behaviors, right? So if you don't decide what you believe, and if you don't set certain behaviors, right, your culture is always going to be an output of what you put in, not what you write on the wall, right? Yes. So I work with a founder that just refused to spend money, like the most Ijebu founder I have ever met in my life, right? And that works for running a really lean operation. But it now turned the organization, essentially nobody in the team wanted to spend on anything ever, even when it was necessary, right? So I had to sort of sit down and sort of point this out to the founder. I was like, this thing has started with you, and this company is kind of like your child. And when you are a leader in an organization, if you have children, you'll understand how your behavior will mirror into your children. But when you see it in your children, you won't really recognize it, right? So it does start with you. So it's only after like lots and lots of conversations that this founder now started, just opening his hand a little bit. And then, it allowed them to get like, a little bit more comfortable with investing in the business.
Excellent. We have 2 minutes more. So I'm just going to ask you what other things that you think we could have spent some time on, just a hint on some of those things, so that the founders in the room they're not missing anything that much. I have a long list of questions, actually. I didn't realize that we had only 20 minutes.
Go ahead and keep asking. No, it's fine. If we have audience questions, that's also fine. I don't have any prepackaged. I'm not like Olumide. I don't have any prepackaged advice for you guys. But scaling businesses is hard. It's relentless repetition. And you have to decide whether it's for you. I think there are some people that are great at being 0 to 1 founders. And I think it's really, really, really important for us to just face the truth of whether we are ready to be 1 to 100 operators, right? And if that's not you, you are still great, you are still special. Just give way for the person that's going to scale your business, right? Because it's a very difficult to go from that 0 to 1 skill set is very different from the 1 to 100 skill sets.
Absolutely.
And God bless you if you can do both, but it is rare to find people that can do both. But there are a lot of emotions, because I find that there's a lot of tension in that sort of founder handover. That person that the founder hires to scale the business, and then it just from the founder's end, it might feel like you're losing your grip on your business. But but I think it's important that you mentally prepare yourself for that, because you need, even if Shola was here, Shola has a CEO now. He got somebody to come and scale the business. Google did it, Facebook did it. It's okay to do it.
Yes.
But I think it's important to make sure that your business is at a point where it's like generating cash. So at least you have the satisfaction of knowing that, okay, I got it from 0 to 1. This next phase, maybe I should just observe a little more and let me share the work with other people.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. Because I was going to say that a lot of founders don't realize that you don't have to be founder and CEO of your business, right? You can be founder and CTO, or founder and CBO, or founder and CCO, or whatever, right? Let somebody else who has the experience or who has the mindset or the ability to lead the team and to scale it out from where you stopped. Let them come in and let them come and do what they are supposed to do. But it seems to be in this our ecosystem, everybody is founder and CEO. Once you have an idea like this and you can write 6 lines of code, you don't turn founder and CEO, right? And then you want to be there forever, or as long as the company exists, you are founder and CEO. It doesn't really work that way. So there's a lot of examples in the West, like Adia said, which is what you are copying, to be honest, that, like she said, that you can take a step back and let somebody else come and take over the reins and do some of the things that you are not equipped to do, and just face the things that you are very good at. Something else that I wanted to touch on is like fundraising. I know that is also critical, is important. And I wondered if you had any tips for some founders in terms of like raising funds. I would also add to that a little bit stuff like expansion, like creating like different markets, going into different markets, creating different products, unlocking different verticals, essentially unlocking several other opportunities for you to get revenue for your company.
Sure. Okay, so in terms of fundraising, I have been blessed to not having not done it directly myself. But I am a good negotiator because I've done a lot of business development. So usually the dynamic, is I feel like the work needs to be divided. Let the person that is fundraising focus on fundraising. And I have seen that split where, there's been a case where I've been the CEO and I'm like, right now, what the business needs is somebody to run the business. And I'm here to run the business, right? And I left, for instance, this happened at Thrive. And I let the founders keep doing the fundraising, right? Because they were best suited for it. They were the ones telling the story. They owned the story. Yes. I was just there for the turnaround. So there was zero reason for me to be involved in any fundraising outside of the fundraising related to the crisis. Now that I did myself. Right? So again, the work was clearly split. So all the DFIs and all those people that they get to work with, I barely met those guys. But in the case of Migo, it was opposite. So Ikechi was the CEO and was doing the fundraising, himself. But of course, as, founders here, you encounter a lot of frustration. But because I've negotiated, he'd come back, play the conversation to me, and then we would game plan. Right? But I was also, in that case, focused on running the business. I remained the operator.
And expanding.
Right. So the business continued to grow. The traction story was not interrupted, because when you are, a founder and you step away from your business and you're the one running the business, it will show in your revenue, right? So you want to make sure that first of all, the work is split. Right, and then if you have, an operator that is good at negotiation, go back and sort of play back the conversations with them. It's like going back to go and refresh, and then, you go back and fight for more money again after that. So that would be my perspective.
Yes. So talk about the new verticals, new markets, new commercial opportunities for revenue, all of that. Just touch on that a little bit. How does one approach that as a founder? So
I take a product roadmap with like a different perspective, right? I look at risk in 2 ways, right? You look at market risk, right? Like demand risk. Are customers going to want this product, right? Because what I see a lot of companies do is you launch a product in January and expect to have 1 million users by February, right? Like they expect this immediate reaction from the market, right? And also sometimes you're trying to launch a product or feature that you've never launched before, and you set a timeline. You actually don't even know what the execution risk is. So you need to sort of look at your innovation and feature and roadmap pipeline, in two ways. Market risk, is it low, medium, or high? versus execution risk. Have I launched this before? How long is it going to take me to figure out how to launch this? Do people in the team or the organization understand it yet? So, for instance, if you look at, let me use a telco, something like, voice, is low market risk, low execution risk. The company has been doing it for 22 years, right? At least in MTN's case, right? So there's no question. You can pinch me at any point in time and I can tell you per hour how much, right, one is supposed to make in terms of voice revenue, okay? Now, data, on the other hand, is fast growing. That has, maybe low to medium risk, okay? So that one is the one you are still plugging away, looking for scale, trying to increase yield, trying to get more users for that particular product, right? That's the growing product. And then far out, right, where execution risk is high, market demand risk is high, you put something like 5G. Right? Because there are a lot of the market requires that you have a 5G phone, for instance, to consume 5G. We're still trying to convince customers, what's the difference between 3G, 4G, and 5G. Do you understand that? That's still not 100% clear to everybody, that's not in particular use cases like gaming or Nollywood, right? So somebody that just uses their primary data usage is WhatsApp is still asking, why should I bother with 5G, right? And then we're still, MTN is still going through rolling out that network in a very big way. So execution risk is still, quite high, right? Because you don't have a full coverage network. So, by the time you say, okay, 80% of my revenue should come from the area that I understand the most, right? And then you now sort of tear it out like that. So with you have your lowest revenue expectation from your highest risk situation. That generally is how I tend to manage an innovation pipeline. So I have maybe more junior team members monitoring the product that I know and understand, and we know the revenue, right? But then things that are further out in the circle, are the things that need a little bit more leadership attention, right? Because they are not standardized. When they are standardized ahead, then you can now pass them into the rest of the organization. Does that make sense? I know that was a very complex thing.
I think it does. Does it make sense? Excellent. Okay, I think we're about to be chased off stage now. So I wanted to touch a little bit on market expansion as a way of getting more revenue for your business, in terms of how to scope for new markets and how you...
Well, wait first. There are more than 1 million people between the two toll gates on Lekki Expressway. So can we just cool off? Let's actually give products to the people that are here, right? Before we start thinking about going to other countries and speaking different languages. No, I'm serious, right? So there are literally 1 million people on that stretch of road. Yeah. Can we build things I know there are lots of romantic business models on TechCrunch and all of that, right? But please, your customers are here. Can we actually build things that they need?
Yes, I agree. But the angle I was coming from is the angle. Sorry, oh shit, Odudua. The angle. The angle of hedging your bets, right?
Right.
If you are functioning in an environment where there's a limit to how much you can scale your revenue and also profitability.
Okay.
And there are opportunities elsewhere that you think that might be the barrier of adoption or the barrier of entry might be much lower and might help you get some more revenue out. How do you think about that?
Okay. So for me, generally, where I see the biggest headache is when people build a business with dollar cost and naira revenue. Okay, so the first thing we need to really, really concentrate on at the start is how do you flip that? How do you have naira cost and dollar revenue? Like I just saw, Olumide and I just saw a pitch of a company that was trying to build some social media automation, kiniko, and they were so proud of how little they were charging for this thing. I said, whoa, Oga, HubSpot, what do they call those people? It starts with an H. It's like marketing.
HubSpot. I think HubSpot. You said HubSpot.
HubSpot, yeah, right? So I said HubSpot will pay for that's your exit strategy. But if you're charging $2 when you can charge $20 a month, you're picking the wrong customer. So that's I actually said what you should do is hire individuals to support your operations in Nigeria, right? Build your automations off of, activities in Nigeria and then sell abroad. Right? So I think that we need to recognize that we have a very high population here, but the average revenue per user is probably going to be lower. You can 10x that just by simply selling to a different market.
Absolutely.
Right? And we know how to do so much with a lot less, right? That there's a lot of margin opportunity. So, but I think by the time you go and start getting AWS, blah, 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 and all your costs are now dollarized and you're trying to sell to a Nigerian customer, you're not going to win. But rather, you can create markets, hire people, create jobs in Nigeria, but sell to foreign markets. And that's my current thesis that I'm preaching this gospel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adia. Thanks, everyone. I hope everyone
Thank
had a
you.
good time. I wish we had more time, but we don't. So thank you very much for listening to us.